How do you know what's true? How do you get rid of the biases in your perspective? How do you get rid of the fake news in your brain? How do you get rid of the untrue facts and conspiracy theories? How do you sort through it all? How do you make sense of it all? Perspective organizes experience. There's a philosopher in California named Jack Horner that said this back in, I think, the 50s. Perspective organizes experience. And the example that we often give for that is you're in a big downtown city someplace, Chicago, who knows where, right? You come down, you turn the corner around this big tall building, and you turn the corner and you see half a block down a woman coming out of a building, looks like a hotel, right, with the big beautiful doors and everything else. And suddenly a street guy is running up towards her and you're thinking, oh my God, he's going to steal her purse, right? And then half a second later, you look up and you see there's a piano on a crane dangling 8 stories above her. 2 of the 3 cables have broken and the piano's dangling and he's trying to push her back in the building because the piano's about to come down and kill her. And you think, oh my God, he's not a thief or a crazy street person. He's a hero. And then you, like a half a second later, you hear, okay, cut. Morris, let's go ahead and run that again. Now this time when you run up towards her, I want you to scream, and now you're like, oh, it's a movie. It's all fake. So if 3 different people saw this from those 3 different perspectives, all of them would believe it's true because they saw it with their own eyes, right? They saw it with their own eyes. And the fact of the matter is, most people are running around with multiple untrue facts, right? Some conspiracy theory brain rot of some kind that distorts the field of what they can perceive and see. If you have a worldview that says the street person is a criminal, he was going to attack her, he was going to steal her purse, push her down the ground, beat her up and things like that, you might watch one TV station because that's your worldview. If your worldview was, oh my gosh, this guy's a hero and a great patriot and he's saving her life, you might have a completely different worldview. And then if you think it's all just a movie and all just a show, then you're going to have a whole nother worldview. And if you think of the way people run their lives, right now, there's so much like chaos in politics and division and everything else. These are all just people seeing the same world from different points of view and believing it's true and willing to fight for its truth and willing to hurt each other for its truth and willing to do all these crazy things. And here we are as the regular average person going, I don't know how to know what's true. How do you know what's true? How do you get rid of the biases in your perspective? How do you get rid of the fake news in your brain? How do you get rid of the untrue facts and conspiracy theories? How do you sort through it all? How do you make sense of it all? Well, the first thing you have to do is stop and step back, because the wider your perspective, the more you're going to see. If you're standing 10 feet away from the woman and the man in the doorway, and you think he's going to rob her and push her, take her purse and everything else, you can't see behind you that there's a film director. And you can't see up above that there's a piano dangling on a wire 8 stories above. So you're unable to capture those perspectives. In this example, there's only one perspective that's actually true. And the one that's actually true is the movie set and the director, because they have orchestrated the piano on the cable. It's not dangling from cable with all these broken wires and everything else. It's actually got one very secure cable, and the piano is probably empty and weighs about 50 pounds. It's probably made out of balsa wood or something, so it's safe, right? And the guy is pushing the woman inside. It's all just a game. It's all just a movie. And so much of what we see is this kind of performative theater, or what the Japanese would call kabuki theater. It's made for show. Right? Whether it's politics or business, it's made for show. It's not real. What's real is what happens, right? And it's very hard to tell what happens because we're sifting through so many things. So what are the biggest untrue facts and conspiracy theories that we have to deal with in the modern world, right? And they run along just big genres. There's conspiracy theories about politics, about money, about culture and race, about science and AI and everything else, and about religion and what to believe. So there's all these major areas of life that we have to think about that have conspiracy theories about them. Now, let's step back in an even bigger picture. Are any of them true? Maybe, probably. I'm sure there are some things that are very true. So you have to step back again and go, okay, well, how does that impact me? Let's pretend that there's actually a conspiracy theory in a Latin American country to make something that you absolutely hate in society a law. Okay. There was probably laws like that 50 years ago or 100 years ago in other countries. You can't let it, chap you too much. You can't let it bother you too much. You have to focus on what's in front of me with my life. How do I live a good life? How do I live a positive, healthy life? How can I be good for myself, my family, my community, my friends, the people I work with in business, my religion, whatever it is? How can I be a good contributor to that? What can I do that's good and right and true and beautiful? That's more important than getting frothed up about a conspiracy theory. So what we look at is there's reality, which is pretty much, we've defined it in humanity as personal. It's my reality, it's my truth. And then there's actuality, right? So if I say my personal reality is this is I don't know, it's a lemon. Look at the color, it's a lemon. You know it's a lemon. We all know it's a lemon. What's wrong with you? This is a lemon. If you say this is something other than a lemon, I think you're crazy and you're out to get me. It's like, no, we can objectively say it's a coffee mug or a tea mug or a water, whatever you want it to be. It's a mug of some kind. So we can have an objective reality to it. But the personal truth that the lemon guy is carrying around is that this is a lemon and I'm willing to fight for it and die for it and everything else. So is there an objective truth in many cases? Yeah. Yeah, there is. What we have is this like crossover Venn diagram of everybody's personal reality. And where they touch and where they overlap and where they agree, they create a larger set of reality, right? Like, for example, America on, let's just say, on January 1st, 1946, was probably the undisputed world power, right? That was a fairly objective military, industrial, political kind of a reality. Was it true? Probably it was also actual. It was probably real and actual. And most people believed it to be true. Now, maybe the Soviets didn't believe it. That might be true also. However, there's an objective reality, right? Like objectively, we believe that the Americans were the first people to the moon, to get onto the moon, right? To step foot on the moon. I think we're also the only people that have stepped foot on the moon. But fundamentally, the concept here is that there is always going to be something, whether it's an overlap of beliefs, there's always going to be something that is objectively actual. We may not be able to perceive it though. Now, how do we deal with this in everyday life? Well, first of all, don't get gassed up and lathered up and frothed up over something that someone told you that may or may not be true. You just don't know. And if you start looking for sources of reality, that's where it gets very hard. If you try and find sources of what's true, how do you know? Well, this scientific paper did all this research. How do we know it's true? The difficulty we have today is the breakdown of trust and authority and a willingness to agree that something can be true. Is there just one reality? Yes. Can people perceive it differently? Absolutely. So the oldest story I know about this is the elephant. And there's 5 blind people have been blindfolded and they're around the elephant grabbing different parts. One guy gets the trunk. I know what an elephant is. This is the elephant. Another guy gets the big wavy ear. I know, I got it. Another one gets the big heavy foot. No, it's me. The other one gets the side of it. It's like, oh my gosh, the ribs are just giant. The other person gets the tail. And then someone who isn't touching anything hears the elephant make a noise where the other people are all deaf and blind. So it's like they all have a different perception, a piece of the elephant, but not the whole truth. They have a partial truth, but not the whole truth. So part of what we have is that the world today is filled with people who think they know everything. And I don't mean that in like some sort of, mean way, but it's like they think they understand the world completely. And in fact, they only have a partial truth. Most truths are only partial. Again, they've got just the leg of the elephant or just the nose of the elephant or trunk of the elephant, and they think they have the whole elephant. And it just isn't so. Now, the ability to hold 2 opposing thoughts at one time is a sense of maturity and wisdom and intellect. So in other words, if you can imagine, you've got the trunk, but somebody else has got the tail, and they're telling you, no, I've got this. And you're like, wait a minute, maybe this elephant is bigger than I imagined. Maybe there's more to include here. Maybe I don't know everything. And then someone else says, hey, but I've got this thing. It feels like a big giant foot. And it's about, it's almost a meter around. It's a huge foot. Like, this must be a very big thing. So you begin to expand your points of view and take in the points of view of others and put them together. And now you've got a whole elephant eventually, instead of just a partial truth. Most human knowledge is partial and it's partially true. And there is true, and yet it's insufficiently true. Right? So for example, some people say, well, there's animals and there's humans. You're like, so we're not animals? What are we made of? Cardboard? Right? No, we're both. We're both a human and a primate and an animal, and you can go right down the list up and down the chain of biology, and you can say we have all these elements to us, right? And we're both finite and infinite. Our capacity to imagine appears to be relatively infinite, but is it? Right? So we don't know. So we have to say, I know this much of it, and there's more to learn, right? Let's say that you had gone through school and you had learned all the way to algebra. Woo, you know a lot of math, man, right? But you know more math than people 300 years ago did on average, right? Like 99.99% if you have algebra. So, but that's not the end of math. But if you think it is, then you think that everybody else who's doing, trigonometry and calculus and pre-calculus and post-calculus math and so forth, that those people are crazy and talking insanity. They mean nothing. They just lost their minds. They're worshiping Satan, whatever your word is that you want, your phrase. The fact of the matter is, we think if we just have algebra and we know algebra is the best you can do, that they're crazy. But they look at us and say, you don't understand yet. So we have to recognize that we don't know everything. We can't know everything. We have to have a certain level of trust in each other. And that's the hardest part, because there's a massive amount of money and power being used to make us distrust each other. So part of what happens is, if you can properly understand something fully as best you can and keep going and keep learning and keep growing about something, I know this and there may be more, right? I know this and there may be more, this and or more. Then what happens is you open your perspective to including other perspectives. So in the United States, for example, there's 10 cities of over 1 million people, and there's 2 cities with over 10 million people. Now, many Americans will think, woo, we're the best. We have all these big cities. It's amazing, incredible. But then you look at China, and they've got 160 cities over 1 million people, and they've got 10 cities over 10 million people. And their technology, if you go there, is equal or exceeding that of the United States in many areas. So, for example, if you go onto a train here and you want to go between New York and Chicago, you're taking Amtrak. I'm not dissing Amtrak in any way. It's a nice service. But in China, they have high-speed bullet trains that go 3 times as fast, and they look like you're in a spaceship. They're new, they're clean, they're modern, they're fast, they're inexpensive. Why? Because China chose to invest in its country rather than here we invest in corporations and we invest in private wealth. They invest in public wealth. So now I'm not making a judgment of that. That's just actually true. You can go and look at it and see Amtrak is relatively, old and not in great shape. And China has brand new 25,000 miles of high-speed bullet trains. Whole different world. So why is that? But the perspective of the American might be, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best. The question is, the best at what? Many things, but many things not. And that's got to be okay. Because if your identity is tied into a worldview and a belief, then you'll be crushed when you find outside information, or you'll just refuse to learn anything else outside of what you already know. In which case, you put yourself in a bubble that you can't get out of. So you're prone to conspiracies, lies, untruths, manipulation, and fear, because you must believe these things in order to maintain your truth of the world. And in fact, that's a weak position. That's a horribly weak, immature, ineffective, and unfortunately sad perspective. In order to make sense of the world, to understand it, to be able to predict outcomes, to get a sense of certainty, you have to let go of the need to do that. Because if we cling too tightly to what we believe, we strangle it. And we become identified with it. It's me. I believe these things. This is me. It's like, no, you're just someone experiencing life. It's going to be okay, right? Because the things our parents thought and our grandparents thought have mostly been proven to be not true. Or let's put it this way, that there's been a greater reality that we've discovered, a more actuality that we've discovered that wasn't there at one time, right? There was a time when we thought there were 10 elements in the world, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, etc. Now we know there's 115, maybe 118. I don't remember anymore. My bad. And what that means is that there are things out there that we don't know yet that are true, that are actual, that are real, that we haven't discovered. So hold that as a perspective for ourselves. Imagine that there's 8 billion other people in the world all thinking that they're right. and you and I want to enforce our world beliefs on them and tell them that we're right and they're wrong. So maybe just take the concept of the broader your perspective, the more you can include various sources of people that you believe or don't believe, just to see what they're saying, and then try and do your best to fact check it. Check in with AI if you have access to that kind of a tool to fact check yourself. Because what you're going to find is all of us have partial truth, not the whole truth, and that there are always going to be perspectives beyond what we have now. And that if we can increase our perspectives, if we can increase our points of view, if we can steel man, which is to take the opposite point of view and look at it from that point of view at our own self and our own beliefs, then we begin to grow our intellect and our wisdom and our ability to predict and make sense of the world. And we're less likely to be taken advantage of by conspiracy theories, fear traps, marketing, and all the other things that people want to talk about. And here's the last thing I would leave you. I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, and she said, people who are simple in life just want to talk about other people. People who are curious and interested in the world talk about events and try and understand them. And people who really want to get a big perspective, people who really want to grow their intellect and their capacities, talk about ideas. So I hope these ideas have been helpful.